You know how Ram guys swear up and down that their truck is the best thing ever because it has a Cummins engine. And the Cummins engine, whether it's the 5.9 or the 6.7, it's the best thing since sliced bread, and God himself put his hand on it for reliability and all this crazy stuff. And yes, pretty much every Cummins is a pretty reliable engine. But let's try to flip that on its head. And more specifically, let's look at everything wrong with the 6.7 liter Cummins. Before we get too deep into this video, I do want to mention two things. One, the 6.7 Cummins is a very reliable engine, so there's not actually that many things wrong with it. As you'll see in this video, we'll go really deep into the problems, but there's not actually that many problems. And number two, we will not be going over any transmission related issues. For this video, we're just going to be looking at the 6.7 engine. We're not going to be looking at the Ram truck or the transmission behind it or anything like that. If you guys want to see a video on all the Ram and Cummins transmission issues, let me know down in the comments below and I can make that happen. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the most problematic parts on the Cummins. And to start, let's look at the parts that everybody loves to hate, which is the emission systems, and more specifically the EGR system. Starting with the EGR cooler itself, we see nearly the same problems that you'll find on a Duramax or Power Stroke engine with their EGR coolers. And that's the whole thing getting clogged up from excessive soot. Now, as a quick refresher, the EGR cooler has one job, and that's to cool exhaust gases down before they enter back into the intake. Otherwise, you'd have blazing hot exhaust gases entering the engine, and that would cause a whole host of other issues on top of being really bad for performance. And for those who don't already know, the main function of the EGR cooler is to lower combustion temperatures by basically diluting the air-fuel mixture with a small amount of exhaust gas. With this in mind, it's easy to understand why an EGR cooler is needed, because cooler exhaust gases will help lower combustion temperatures more than hot exhaust gases. With that in mind, it's easy to understand why an EGR cooler is needed, because cooler exhaust gases will help lower combustion temperatures more than hot exhaust gases. The whole point of this is to reduce NOx emissions output, and you might think that introducing exhaust gas into the intake would drastically reduce performance, but it's actually only a 1 or 2% reduction in power, so the difference is pretty much imperceptible. So no worries there. Luckily, as compared to something like a Power Stroke, the 6.7 Cummins EGR cooler is actually an easy fix problem. While some other engines have EGR coolers crack or overheat from other coolant or oiling issues, the 6.7 is really just an issue of it getting clogged, which means it's a super easy to fix or prevent entirely with semi-regular cleaning of the EGR cooler. It also helps to drive the truck hard and limit idle time. With lots of idle time, exhaust gas temperature will remain very low, which means soot can stick to pretty much everything in the EGR system without being burned off, which then ultimately leads to the clogging. With hard driving, or even driving in a heavy load scenario, such as towing, you'll be able to get your EGTs high enough for enough time to burn off excessive soot in the EGR cooler to prevent clogging from happening in the first place. That leads up to the next EGR system part, which is prone to having issues for quite literally the exact same reasons, and that's the EGR valve. This little valve is responsible for controlling the flow of the entire EGR system. As you can imagine, if the EGR system was kept wide open in all situations, you'd run into issues such as too much exhaust gas entering the intake at idle, to the point that it could cause your truck to stall or just idle rough. And that's exactly what can happen when the EGR valve gets stuck open or breaks. And again, this is almost entirely from excessive soot buildup, which generally occurs on trucks with a lot of idle time or trucks that are driven very lightly. Luckily, this can be solved with some scheduled cleaning, or even once it gets stuck, it's often fixable with some cleaning. In worst case scenarios, you'll just have to replace the valve. But better yet, just drive your truck hard or tow more often to help burn off the excessive soot in your EGR system to prevent these issues from happening in the first place. That takes us down the emission system pipeline, way away from the intake and the EGR system, all the way down the exhaust to the diesel particulate filter. And again, this is something that pretty much all diesel-powered trucks after 2007 were fitted with a diesel particulate filter, thanks to some EPA regulations. And as a quick refresher, the job of the DPF is very simple. Capture excessive exhaust soot and then burn it off occasionally through a regeneration mode. The regeneration is generally done through two modes, an active regeneration and passive regeneration. Passive regeneration occurs when the exhaust gas temperatures are high enough to oxidize the soot collected in the DPF faster than the soot is collected. This typically occurs when the DPF is above 300 degrees Celsius or 572 degrees Fahrenheit. This occurs during highway driving or when driving with heavy loads. Active regeneration occurs when the exhaust temperatures are not naturally high enough to oxidize the soot collected in the DPF faster than it's collected. This works by injecting a small amount of diesel fuel into the exhaust stream, which is then oxidized by the diesel oxidation catalyst. Unfortunately though, it's fairly common for the DPF to become permanently clogged with time, which can then force your truck to active regenerate more often, which then leads to even more issues. And what's even worse than that is that a new diesel particulate filter isn't cheap. Generally, they're anywhere from $1,500 and up. And unfortunately, the DPF related issues don't stop there, because for some odd reason, Cummins decided to use the late injection method for their active regeneration method, which means they're injecting fuel in the cylinder during the exhaust stroke as a way to inject raw diesel fuel into the exhaust system to heat up the DPF, enough to burn off the soot. As you can imagine, spraying diesel fuel into the cylinders during the exhaust stroke, but not igniting the fuel, can cause some issues. Most notably, not all of that fuel is going to make it out of the cylinder and into the exhaust system, which means you have a small amounts of diesel fuel washing down the cylinders and into the engine oil. This causes oil dilution, which ultimately means a decrease in lubricity for your oil, especially with modern diesel fuel, which doesn't have nearly as much lubricity as the old high sulfur diesel fuel. With less engine lubricity can come accelerated engine wear and the need for more frequent oil changes. GM and Isuzu managed to get around this issue entirely with their Duramax trucks by using the 9th injector method rather than the late injection method, which means they quite literally have a fuel injector on the exhaust system as a way of getting the fuel into the system. Of course, the solution to all the EGR and DPF issues that we've mentioned here is to delete the systems off of your truck. But be warned, it's not legal. Sure, some states, cities, and even counties don't require emissions testing to register your vehicle, so you might think it's legal to delete your truck's emission systems. But just because your local government doesn't care, doesn't mean the federal government doesn't. That takes us to the last soot-related issue, which again affects pretty much all diesel trucks with similar parts, and that's the turbocharger. The 6.7 Cummins uses a variable geometry turbocharger, which uses internal vanes to effectively change the size of the turbo, which simply means it has better response and better power as compared to a fixed geometry turbocharger. Unfortunately though, soot can clog up pretty much everything in the turbo, and it can cause the vanes to stick either open or closed. When this happens, you're either stuck with effectively a small turbocharger that responds really well but doesn't make very much peak power, or effectively a big turbocharger which doesn't respond well but does make good peak power. Like other soot-related issues though, this can generally be fixed with either hard driving, limited idle time, and or occasional cleaning. Next up, we have head gaskets, which is not something that you'd expect on a Cummins engine. Like, it's not an issue on the 5.9 Cummins, it's not an issue even on the 5-liter Cummins, it's not an issue on most of their engines. So it's a little bit weird to see this on the 6.7, but nonetheless, it is an issue. If you poke around online, you'll see people blaming all sorts of things, from the way the heads are milled, to the regen cycle cranking up cylinder pressure, to the turbo sticking and creating excessive cylinder pressure, increased power as compared to old Cummins engines, emission systems increasing the load on the coolant system, and much, much more. Realistically, there could be a ton of different things that cause this head gasket issue, but there doesn't appear to really be a singular cause. The solution, of course, is to ditch your head bolts and upgrade to head studs. You can also do little things like adding fire rings to the cylinder head for improved sealing. And while you're doing that work, you can address some of the valve train weaknesses, such as the factory push rods, which can very easily wear out prematurely or even bend. While the head is off, you can also ditch the factory pressed-in freeze plugs for some thread-in plugs to eliminate the possibility of that issue down the road. All of that combined with a nice multi-layer head gasket can pretty much solve the head gasket or head lifting issue entirely. Again though, there doesn't really appear to be a singular cause for this issue. Rather, it's a multi-source problem that can just be prevented in the first place with the aforementioned upgrades to the head bolts and head gasket itself. Now, the very last issue of the 6.7 Cummins is something that only affects the 2019 and 2020 model years, where the engine was strangely switched from the Bosch CP3 injection pump to the Bosch CP4.2 injection pump. If you remember from our Duramax guide video, we saw the LML Duramax also use this CP4.2 injection pump, and it was also very problematic in that application as well. You'll also find this injection pump on the 6.7 Power Stroke. It's arguably the most popular injection pump available for manufacturers to use, but it's also known for being quite problematic. If the pump self-destructs, it will send metal fragments through the lines and the rails, into the injectors, and out of the return system. Detecting this failure before it happens is nearly impossible, and by the time it's done, your entire injection system, from the pump, the lines, rails, injectors, and more, are pretty much all destroyed. The problems typically occur when contaminants get into the fuel. But the whole reason that manufacturers choose the CP4 pump over the CP3 pump is production cost and weight. The CP4 pump is much lighter thanks to its aluminum construction and also much cheaper. Typically, these pumps see failure at or before the 100,000 mile mark, depending on the quality of fuel and how well the truck is maintained. While there isn't a singular source of problems with the CP4 pump, a lot of it revolves around debris and metal shavings from cam erosion inside the pump. Those metal shavings are eventually passed through the whole fuel system, and as time goes on, it's really only a matter of time until something fails entirely. Luckily though, Cummins realized that this injection pump wasn't as reliable as the previous CP3 injection pump. So for 2021, they actually switched back to the CP3 pump, and the CP4.2 pump on the 19 and 20 models was recalled by Ram. And ironically, the fix was to revert those recalled models back to the CP3 pump. So that's that. That's pretty much every single major problem on the 6.7 Cummins. And I'm gonna say something really bold here. I've got a hot take. You could make an argument that the 6.7 Cummins is actually better than the 5.9 Cummins when it is deleted. Because the emission systems cause almost the entire majority of issues on the 6.7, once those are gone, you could really argue it is better than the 5.9. Because of the fact that it has a better turbocharger from the factory. It's got a variable geometry turbocharger that makes a ton of power, and it has more displacement. So 6.7 can really make a crazy amount of power with some mild bolt-on parts and some tuning as compared to a 5.9 with a similar setup. Regardless though, if you think the 5.9 or the 6.7 is better, there is no denying that Cummins engines in general are very reliable, and the 6.7 is a very reliable engine. It's arguably the most reliable engine since it's come out. So from 2007 until now, as compared to a Duramax or a Power Stroke, the Cummins has been the most reliable engine. There's no doubt about that. There really aren't that many major problems. As you saw in the video, there's about 6 major problems. Most of them revolve around the emission systems, and the head gasket issue is actually fairly easy to solve. So there's really not that much to worry about with this engine. Transmissions, a little bit of a different story, but that's a different video for a different time. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to smash the thumbs up button. I mean, absolutely break your phone screen if you like this video. Be sure to get in the comments, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this video and what videos you want to see in the future. Get subscribed so you don't miss out on future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.